Hi, today we are going to talk about the security market line, or SML for short. What exactly is the security market line? It provides a linkage between the risk and return of a single security. Let me draw a graph where the x-axis is the risk and the y-axis is the expected return of one security. Okay, let's imagine the risk-return relationship of any security is, say, in this form. Is this graph feasible or does it look right? Imagine that this is the shape of the graph, and let's say you're at a point here where you expected return of a security is X. What is this trying to tell you? It's saying that for every X return, expected return for this security, there could be two possible risks for this security, which is clearly not reasonable because there's one-to-one relationship between risk and return. So similarly, if you think about it, can the graph look like that? Again, using the same argument at any point in time, say here, for any risk of a security, there could be two possible returns. Again, this is not reasonable. Okay, so because there's one-to-one relationship between these two risk and return. So what I'm trying to drive here is basically this. There's only one possible shape of the curve between the risk and relationship of security, which is something like that. Okay, why is it positively sloped? Because as you all understand, whenever there's higher risk and there'll be a possibility of higher returns, so this will definitely be a positive slope. Okay, recall previously we spoke about CML, the capital market line. This is very different from SML, which is a graph for a single security. The capital market line links market security returns against the market risk using the efficient frontier. So assuming the efficient frontier looks like that, okay, so this is the risk of the portfolio and this is the expected return of the portfolio. Assuming the frontier looks like that, so this is the maximum return that you can obtain for any unit risk. And let me draw a tangency graph. Right, so this is the risk-free. Okay, so assuming that we can invest in a market portfolio at this risk sigma m, and you can get the expected return at this point, which is the expected return of the market portfolio. Okay, this is just one of the many portfolios, but at this tangency point, you are able to invest fully in whatever cash that we have into this market portfolio. What is a market portfolio, you may ask? This convention from a layman perspective, a market portfolio can be thought about as, say, the Dow Jones Index, the S&P Index, the MSCI World Index. So these are many different indices that made up the market portfolio. Let's look at the risk-reward of this tangency line, which is basically we're trying to obtain this relationship between risk and return. We can obtain the slope of this line by having this as the height and this as the base. So the slope of this line is obtainable by the expected return, minus the risk-free over the standard deviation. Okay, so this is basically, you can think of this as the risk premium per unit risk for under the CML framework in the portfolio. Okay, so why am I talking about this? Because under the SML we want to link the portfolio returns and risk into the individual security risk and return. Because we just now we have not defined what is risk here. We know that in a portfolio the risk is made of the standard deviation, but is the SML framework risk the same as the CML? The answer is no, but I will show you later why this is not so. Let me go into a more detailed proof, which is actually quite mathematical, but let's bear with me. So assume that we invest in a certain weight in this asset, single security I, and then we invest in 1 minus A weights in a market portfolio. Expected return of this new portfolio will be weighted returns weighted returns of the asset and the market portfolio. So it's basically A into the expected return of the asset multiplied by 1 minus A into the expected return of the portfolio, of the market portfolio. And what is the risk of this new portfolio? Okay, so if you look at this, so there's a risk here which is given by A squared into the variance of the asset plus the weight of the market portfolio squared into the variance of the market portfolio. And of course, if you remember our previous class, whenever there's multiple assets, there's always the diversification effect, and which is represented by 2 times the weight of the individual asset and the market portfolio asset multiplied by the covariance term between the asset and the market portfolio. Okay, so this is the expected risk, expected return, and the standard deviation, which you can think of this as the return, and this is the risk. Okay, we are trying to work towards the risk return of a market portfolio in this proof. So to do so, we will be needing to set the weight of A in asset I to be 0. To do so, we should differentiate these two expressions so that we can obtain so that we want to have the change in the weight of A to be as small as possible. Okay, so we differentiate this expression, which gives us this one. Okay, because A is so this term will bring out the constant E, expected return of the individual asset. We bring out the constant expected return of the market asset here. Okay, using a chain rule, we also differentiate this term. Okay, so this is to the power of half. We bring down half, and then we minus the power by 1, so it becomes minus half here. Okay, and then we have to differentiate whatever that we have inside, which is this expression. Okay, so just now I mentioned that we want to set the weight A to 0. So when we do so, this expression becomes this one, when we set A to 0, so that we have something similar to the CML framework. Okay, similarly for this, we set A to 0, and this will become here. And then we divide this one against this one to obtain the risk, the return per unit risk. And this will be under the CML framework. Okay, because we have set A to 0. So let me look at the CML framework, which I wrote just now. This is the expression that we obtain just now, relating the return to per unit risk. Okay, so we relate the two expressions, which is given by this equation here. This was the expression that we wrote just now, and this is the new one that we obtained here. Okay, so when we rearrange this expression, we obtain this is what we call the SML formula. Okay, recall that just now we said that the graph will look something like that. So this is the risk, this is the expected return. Okay, so if you compare this against this, we can say that this is the risk-free given by here, the point where the line cuts the y-axis, and the slope is given by this term. Okay, we call this risk sigma im over sigma squared. This is the covariance term between the asset and the market portfolio. This is the variance term of the market portfolio. Okay, so you have to be careful. This is the x-axis, and this is actually the slope. The slope is given by expected return of the market portfolio minus the risk-free. Okay, so that's basically the proof of the SML formula. This is commonly known as the beta. Okay, yeah, let me begin a new layer to talk a bit more about the SML framework. Okay, I'll redraw the graph. The risk is now known as beta, which is given by the covariance between the asset and the market over the variance of the market. Okay, so this is the expected return of the individual security, and the SML formula is given by expected return of the individual security is equal to the risk-free return plus the beta multiplied by the market return minus the return of the market, minus the risk-free return. Okay, let's try to imagine a scenario where beta is 1. Okay, beta is 1. So what is the implication of beta equal to 1 on this equation? This equation will become the risk-free term cancel off, beta is equal to 1. So the expected return of this security when beta is 1 is equal to the expected return of the market portfolio. Okay, so let me draw this graph here. So when beta is 1, the security is expected to return the expected return of the market portfolio. Let's look at the points above where beta is more than 1. We can see that as beta becomes larger, bigger than 1, we can see that expected return increases. Okay, this implies that as security becomes riskier, the expected return of the security will be larger than what we expect to be returned from the market. Conversely, when we look at beta that is smaller than 1, we can see that the expected return will fall. So you can think of it as when beta is more than 1, the security is riskier than the market, and when beta is less than 1, the security is less risky as compared to market. Okay, let's look at how we implement this security market line in practice. Assuming that we line up a series of securities. Okay, we have security A, security B, all the way. Let's say that we have hundreds of them. And historically, assuming that we have 100 days, okay, day 1, day 2, day 3. So we have all the returns of each of these securities. And of course, we have the return of the market security. This can be thought of as the S&P index. Okay, so we have the returns as well. So for each of these pairs of security and market, we construct the covariance between the security returns and the market return, and we obtain the variance of the market. So we obtain a beta for each of these security. Okay, so beta A, beta B, and so on. So suddenly we also have the expected return of because we have using the historical returns, we also have the expected return. So assuming that for A, beta A is here, and expected return of A is here. Okay, again for B we have, say B is here, so this is beta B, and this is expected return of B. Okay, we have a lot of securities here, so let me just simply run through all these securities. So it will be scattered around this line in this fashion. So how do we eventually draw this line? It's being done by this technique called regression. Basically, we are trying to find a best fit line which minimize the variance, the distance between all these point and this line. So this is what we call the regression technique, and the eventual line that result will be the SML line. Okay, so this is what we do in practice. Okay, lastly, I just want to talk about the risk of any investment. Okay, so let's say we talk about this A which we went through just now, this security A which we went through just now. Okay, what is the risk of investing in A? Okay, so using this formula, we can see that you can see that the risk of investing in A comes from here. Okay, the risk-free has no risk, so the risk comes from here. And of course, this equation is talking about this line, but the actual risk that A poses is not on this line itself. There's also this distance which is not captured in this line. So let's say we call this E. Okay, so there's a term E which is not present in this line. So this also poses a risk when we invest in this security A. Okay, so if you look at this formula again, these are the two risks that is present when we invest in A, and we can call this a diversifiable risk. Or some people call it idiosyncratic risk. Which is represented by this variance, and this is what we call a non-diversifiable risk. Okay, so and the variance is represented by beta square into sigma market square. So it's just simply a square of these two terms. Okay, so why do we call this diversifiable? So assuming that we have invest in, say, B was here. Okay, so this also has an E here. So this risk and this risk actually cancel off somewhat. And if we invest more and more, this whole term gets cancelled out altogether. So this is what we call a diversifiable risk. If we invest in more securities, this risk will disappear. Which is why in the market, most market participants advocate diversification, because you take away this whole diversifiable risk, and what's remaining will be the non-diversifiable risk, represented by beta square into the variance of the market. Okay, that's all I want to say about the SML. Thank you.